Speedrunning is something we're all familiar with. That thrilling rush of completing games as fast as possible is unmistakable. But what about the runs we never see? The ones too long to upload? Well, they look something like this. Who you are watching stuck on this jump for God knows how long is a top player. Throttle struggling to beat an unholy KZ map known as HBLRS2. Their runs usually look more like this. KZ is usually known for its unbelievably fast times, which can bend the mind, but it can sometimes involve extreme levels of difficulty, which results in painfully long times. So, while we are all familiar with these blazing fast WR runs, today what we will be discussing are the aforementioned runs that test a person's sanity. To be clear, I'm not referring to any old map listed as hard on KZ Rush. I'm referring to the hardest of the hard. The maps which would have been viewed as unbeatable in the past, and challenge your will to keep playing in the present. These maps contain some of the most technically difficult jumps out there, resulting in very demanding runs that can vary from a few dozen minutes to several thousand minutes. In the past, extreme maps were centered around a single technique, either climbing or bee-hopping, such as KZCG Extreme, which dates back to 2005 and is completely centered around climbing. However, later on, they started mixing the two techniques, and just a few years later, in maps such as HBLRS, they started mixing everything: climbing, bee-hopping, slides, steep slides, timed bee-hops, and anything a mapper could think of, resulting in many maps that people would just refuse to play, or even try because of a few jumps or techniques they didn't know how to execute with precision, such as steep slides, which took a fairly long time to catch on in extreme maps. Just like my most famous map, GBC Script X. The jumps are not the only thing that has improved and changed. Oh no. How they look also changed. From mostly primitive structuring and textures to pretty much pieces of art such as NKSY3K or MUJ DOM. Extreme maps stopped being just a challenge and started to become a way of expression, a way of legacy, and creativity. One thing that sets extreme maps apart from common maps, for the most part, is how creative mappers are in coming up with new jumps and exploring techniques. They are now the go-to way to try to see how talented you are. The maps of today would be completely unimaginable at the beginning of the game, not just in how they play, but in their looks. No one would think of the crazy stuff people like NKS or QSK have made. The stronghold that extreme maps have on architectural concepts is something to behold because, really, they are very beautiful in their own unique way. When most players have some idea in mind, they go straight away to make an above-average map or extreme map. And this has been the way since 2010 when KZ Synergy X came out with a completely new design idea that to this day, almost a decade and a half later, still influences so many maps, with all the neon lights and simple textures. Before the extreme maps craze, some of the longest runs to date had taken place in my famous map, GBC Script X, which is a map I started doing as a happy birthday gift to Script, the player. After a while, he joined the project, and it just became our map, carrying my mapping tag and his player name. The longest run on Script X after the map release was set at about 475 minutes, and then an even longer run was set by Rachel on Ashes X at about 509 minutes. Unfortunately, I don't have the XJ forum thread with the first completion times. I remember that when I saw Rachel completing the map at 500 minutes, I was really shocked at the time. Little did I know that 500 minutes in the future would be considered an okay time later on for some of the crazy maps that would get released. For example, the best time today at Script X would have been completely unimaginable back in 2016. Just like in a few years, today's hardest maps will also have unimaginable time set comparable to today. There are so many test maps that never got released. Unfortunately, either because the mappers didn't want to release them for being unsatisfied, or because they were just not finished, or they got changed to something else entirely. Looking at you, NKSY4K, NKS Industrial Journey and test version of Ashes X. Script X sparked a fever among mappers, driving them to create maps that pushed the limits of what was possible. People must have thought at the start that this was it. This was the most difficult it could get, but every few months, we would be surprised with a new hardest map that would really push everyone to their limit of sanity. Runs would get increasingly longer and more challenging, with players pushing runs with weapons such as FAMAS and P90. Running with weapons elevates the difficulty because you are much heavier, making you run slower and go down faster in slides. And because of slides, many maps are impossible to complete with any weapon other than the USP, knife, or scout. Today we got runs in the 1,000 minutes range. I myself had a 1,000-minute run a while back on posteriori, which almost every jump is the type I'm definitely not good at, where I spent an ungodly 900 minutes in about 3 jumps. Okazis is a player who has really explored these longer runs, and is one of the few people who can play these maps with weapons. Way back in the days of Illumina, he had a 2,700-minute run where he spent about 1,200 minutes in a single B hop stage. He says it was probably a bad idea to play through that map because just the first B hop of the map alone took something like 50 minutes. However, in his next run, Okazis was able to improve his old time by 2,400 minutes, which resulted in a run of 289 minutes. Yes, of course, it had to be a B-hop stage, adding ridiculous amounts of time to a run as always. But in all fairness, it's the worst B-hop stage on the map, and one of the most annoying B-hops of that era. This stage, a decade later, is still annoying people who try this map. Today, Okazis is an authority in the game. No one would imagine that the guy playing for insane amounts of time in a single map or jump would today be such a skilled player to defy everyone's expectations, especially on technical maps. Gladiator from Ukraine is also an old player, although not known by the wider audience. He is a player who is also pushing very long runs, just like Okazis back in the day. HB Mart is the new map that is generating the most long runs, as it is extremely challenging but also very large. A Chinese player set a new record high time in 1.6 at 4 days and 2 hours, which amounts to 5,900 minutes. It's by far the longest run ever done in KZ. It took place on HB Mart with the P90. I don't know who is this guy, but I know he is a madman for doing this. HB Mart is a map that can barely be done with the knife and USP, and he did it with P90. Truly a testament to show that even when we think we reach the limit, it can be pushed further. Extreme maps have quite a history. In 1.6 KZ, it's hard to say which map started all, but what kicked it to new heights was KZ Synergy X in 2010, which to this day still inspires map design with its distinctive neon lighting. Nowadays, every record in old maps has combos and times that, well, would have been considered impossible back when the maps were released. People just improve their skills and refine every aspect of them. The main players of this kind of map and challenge are always together in trying to see who does the craziest stuff in-game, and because of them, some incredible things have been done in extreme maps, such as HB Mart being possible at all, or some other maps being done without checkpoints, or even without checkpoints with a weapon. XDD made HB Mart. I don't know who that is. There were many maps where long runs have been done, but today this map is the pinnacle of difficulty in the game mode. The map has been played a lot, but there is still a long way to go on it if the map even gets fully explored, which in this late stage of the game I doubt will happen. The best time so far is from Smeeze, who is a well-known CSGO player who recently hopped into 1.6 and has done incredible stuff. He has set some jaw-dropping records and effortlessly plays most extreme maps as if they were just an everyday exercise. All the other extreme maps have been saturated with long runs to the point that they have been explored, and players started looking for something else to play. By the looks of it, HB Mart is going to be the map that will be testing players crazy enough to try to take on it for a long time. Each time a new, most difficult map comes up, it's hard to imagine how harder another map can be. This was a fun mini documentary. Thank you for watching.